All right. Thanks everyone for joining. As Loa said, we have a tentative agenda, and I'm sharing it on my screen right now. Hopefully everybody can see it.
Tarek, can you reload that? Yep, now you have it. Under other comments, Joe will just send a message to the mailing list.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so the usual order is we will brush up the action items we're tracking since last time, and today we want to dig in more into the recent updates that were made to JAG's MPLS M&A header draft. There were some comments received from Greg as well as from Joel. And let's see what comes out in terms of conclusions towards the end. And Loa is going to give an update on the working group adoption poll for LSP ping no route alert draft. As usual, there is another business bullet if anyone wants to add to our agenda. So please let me know if you need to add any item.
Tarek, we should ask if someone else has sent comment to the list and want to be listed under on the agenda.
Sure. Please go ahead.
So I have listed what I've seen. I've seen one mail from Joel. Since he's not on the meeting, I put him under other comments and we can discuss it. I have mails from Greg, which Greg sent to, not to the mailing list, but to the authors and to the working group co-chairs.
I apologize. I thought I sent to all lists MPLS, .NET, and Sudowire.
Yeah, to the chairs only. I think.
Oh, really?
You can check it. I might be wrong, but you can share it when you get to that point on the agenda.
Okay.
And then just recently, I sent out a mail that I listed here. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we'll switch to the action items. I was able to create a new page for the action items that's reachable on the main page, so just use that. It's annoying that. Okay. The formatting is still not great, but the open AIs and towards the bottom we have closed AIs. And should be able to edit as we speak. So we have an AI for the draft MPLS first nibble. And the last update we had tracked on this was December 15. And we had a meeting that was supposed to happen, and it's outstanding. That's what we noted down. If there's any update on more recent update on this, let me know.
The only update I have is that we actually got a flag on that is about to expire. So we need to do something rather quickly.
Not sure if any of the authors is present.
Well, Stuart and me, at least.
Okay.
Sorry, which draft were you about?
First nibble.
Nothing's happened on that. But then there has been a large Christmas holiday since we last spoke.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, bring it back next time.
Okay, thank you for the update. No problem. We have, unfortunately, the numbering is off. It should have picked up, but we have an action item on the use cases draft. We noted that we want the reviewers for different sections for network slicing use case section. And there was the ask to bring in Jeffrey to present generic delivery functions again. So that we can that can happen as well. I'm sure we can. I haven't reached out to Jeffrey since, so still outstanding. There were some comments that we went through the draft, and multiple comments we're tracking. And the update I can, as an author or co-author of this document, they're outstanding as of now. It should be down there. Solution. So I skipped over one. The update 105. So the comments are outstanding as of now. I don't know if anybody else from the authors wants to add. Feel free. That's the update from my side. Okay. I skipped over one action item, and it was about the solution authors to present existence of MPLS use cases with M&A solutions. And that AI was against the solution authors drafts. And we promised to be adding this on next week agenda last time. It's not on this week's agenda. Okay.
I suggest we put it up next week. Put the date there.
To be added. Yeah, 12 is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we brushed up all the action items that are open. Yeah, the formatting of this page should improve. That's something I need to work on as well.
So since no one else has got their hands raised, just to pick up on the point you just made about solutions needing to talk, solutions needing to talk about these sort of use cases and stuff. There is a little bit of that in the JAGS draft, but I think that that is one of the more important things for us to do, to validate the solution, to see what's missing, and to see whether we're comfortable that hardware can build it.
Okay. Stuart, because you're mentioning that some of that is in the JAGS draft.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, certainly in terms of the way they discuss the many different combinations of M&A items that there may be in the packet.
Okay. My question was, do we want to present that in next week, or you think that's enough that people will read it offline? I think we're tracking presenting that.
I think we should certainly have a discussion in this forum. Whether we're ready to do it next week or not, I don't know, but others have got their hands up.
Okay.
Matthew and Greg have got their hands.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I cannot see. Something happened on my WebEx. I can't see the queue. So I would like to ask either you or Loa to help me out with. I totally don't see the attendees and
Well,
yeah.
from top to bottom of my screen, it's Matthew, then Greg.
Okay.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, just my feeling, or my comment on that is, I think maybe what would be really useful would be, and I don't think that's this is in the drags draft, is direct examples of how use cases are implemented using the JAGS encapsulations or the JAGS header formats. So you know how from taking the specific use cases we've got and saying this is a way of encoding that in the M&A header from the JAGS draft. I think the JAGS draft at the moment it looks more at sort of ways of kind of putting together the different headers rather than saying, you know, this is for this use case, you use this header format.
Yep.
And that would be useful to write up somewhere.
Okay. I don't know if you were suggesting separate ID or not.
Yeah, probably a separate ID.
If we produce the body of text, we can decide where it lives in the long term.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else raising their hand? I also don't see either.
Greg.
No.
Greg.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yes, I apologize for not sending my comments to MPLS working group. I'll do it shortly. I send it to DetNet and PALS, although. Two things. First, as it was brought up in London that we need to look at non-IP payload of M&A, and I was thinking on the pseudowire case. I believe that it would be good to turn to attention of peer working group to this work, because beer will be another example of non-IP payload. Secondly, with their illustrating how this proposed M&A solution can be used, might be we can use once the solution is adopted, use it in use cases draft. So then use cases will be illustrated how each of them can be used with the proposed solution.
Good idea.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Hopefully I captured the idea. I was honest to it. Do we have anyone else raising their hand at the moment?
No.
No. Okay. All right, we'll move on then. And let me just save this. Save. We'll go back to the agenda in a moment. Okay. Second item on our agenda is the review of JAGS MPLS M&A header draft. I think all either the authors or the reviewers that gave comments. I think that's we want to give a chance to talk about that. Any one of the authors want to talk about the recent update to revision 4?
Rakesh.
Rakesh, go ahead.
Hi, Happy New Year, everyone. So Jack's on PTO, so he's not here. I can give a very brief update. I've seen comments, a few comments at very high level. Maybe I can share and just go over it. Would
I'm
that be?
okay, Rakesh. Can stop sharing and you can resume. You can go ahead.
I'm sharing a browser. You guys see it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So at very high level, the previous draft and this draft are very, very similar. We maintained the core ideas of the draft in the latest update. A lot of great editorial changes and rewording or rewriting the draft, and many thanks to all the authors who contributed, especially Tony. You did a good pass on it. Thanks, Tony. So it's divided into different LSC formats. It's very similar to what was there before, but now it's saying clearly identifying A, B, C, D as formats, so it's easy to talk about what LSC format that's being discussed. One change that's made is that some optimization of the bits, or I should call it M&A flags, between different formats. So how the scope was located or the length was located, and the bits for the unrecognized action ordering bits, they moved between the C and B a bit. So that's one change if you look into bits and pieces. But having said that, the concept is still the same. The scope is still there as 2 bits. The length is still there. I think the length of the action used to be 2 bits. Now is 4 bits. 4 bits aligned with NASL. The ordering is still there the way it was before. And there are some reserve bits available for future extensions for encoding. So just to highlight, the label A is your BSPL, TC and TTL are not touched. Your LSC B would follow A typically with an opcode and data, and there is a scope. So each NAS, the network action substack, has a dedicated scope, could be I2E, hop by hop, or select. If you need multiple scopes, you have multiple NAS, and that's it's carried in the format B, which is there always after LSC format A. There is a P flag as well for the post stack data. And if you're only carrying post stack, then you have a BSPL label format A and the B with the scope and P flag set. And there is a third format, which is basically to carry additional opcodes. So in this case, the difference between B and C is that no scope here. This would be the third LSC, if you will, and it carries the opcode and data. So this allows a bit 8 bits more data compared to the previous. Actually, not 8, but yeah, it is more 8 bits more data, as well as ability to change the data in the TTL field in case just like no further fast reroute, FRR kind of things that needs to flip the bit. You may not want to do it into the label field. So it allows you to do that if there is a requirement like that. But here you can have more data and opcode, and there is the format D is in case there is a requirement to carry a bigger amount of data. As you can see, I think it's 30 bits. And the opcode can define a series of flags, and then in the sequential order, they have a data associated with it, and data can be larger. So it gives a flexibility of carrying large ancillary data. So basically, the rest, there is a scope, there is details about if the action is not known, we can skip it, and that's why we have the NAL. So based on NAL, the main purpose is to, if it's not supported action, you can just go to the next one. But if there is an opcode that must be processed, then there is also an option to drop the packet. There is good chunk of discussion on the ordering. Typically, the actions would be processed in the same order that's encoded in the stack. But if there is a different requirement, there is a beat available for it. And then the draft goes about various reserve opcodes. So one reserve opcode is that if post-stack data starts not immediately after the bottom of the stack, but maybe it carries some GSCH control word or some L2 header or some other things that for legacy reasons, and it can break some legacy node. There is always a way to put the post-stack data after some offset. So there is a flexibility for that using opcode 1. Another opcode is for the flag-based NAIs without any ancillary data. So these are just a quick a bunch of flags that can be used, and it's used for not bloating the NAS with different opcodes that just needs a bit of a flag. There is also a flag with ADs. In this case, a flag has an associated data. So that's the difference between the opcode 2 and 3. 2 has no data, 3 has data. There is a need to order PSD and ISD. If there is a requirement, then NAS can be broken down and into different opcodes, and then it can be encoded certain way. And it's the ordering opcode is available for that. I think it used to be 8 bits before the opcodes, and it got truncated a bit in order to have the nice 16 bits data. It used to be, I think, 14 bits, and it was a bit of a weird number. In computer, the 16-bit data is quite common, so there was a bit of refactoring to accommodate 16 bits of data with 7 bits of opcode. But if you need to extend it, we think it's 126, 127 opcodes are plenty for now, but if you need to extend, there is a way one could reserve for it in the future. I think it's expected that hop by hop is placed before the I2E. So as intermediate nodes can access the data easily and doesn't need the deeper reading into the stack. There might be need to have multiple copies of it, just like entropy label. Or there might be need to process it as a segment endpoints and whatnot. So it is up to the NCAP node to add stack appropriately, so it is exposed where it needs to be processed. The capability is obviously required on the MNA gets exposed to a node. It must understand the MNA, otherwise it will drop the packet. So some capability signaling is required. There are details about each node responsibilities. I think we can skip that. And definitely it's expected that it's backwards compatible on the node that is not M&A capable and doesn't need to process the M&A. And then there is basically various INI allocations for the BSPL, the opcodes, as well as flags with AD and without AD. I think that might be it. And then the different examples of how A, B, C, and D can be stacked together for different I wouldn't call it use cases, but those are just different examples on how it would look like when you put them ABCD together in different sequences and whatnot. So yeah, that's a very high level idea for the draft, and I think we can have a discussion as next step.
Sure. Rakesh, we have questions that, or people raising their hand. So Stuart is at the top of the queue. Stuart,
Okay,
go
thank
ahead.
you. So I think this is a very well written document. I do have some concerns about whether forwarders can implement it, but we will get to that later on. In terms of the detail, I like the idea of you putting the offset in to find the data after the ACH, but I think you've perhaps forgotten that the ACH is actually an indicator of a channel, and the channel can have arbitrary length. And whilst I don't know of anything in classical MPLS that requires arbitrary length, I think some of the MPLS TP stuff actually allowed whole signaling sort of streams to go down there. So we can finesse this by saying it's not important, but we do need to comment on the fact that the information following the ACH may be of arbitrary length.
Yeah, and that's fair because each packet can have different lengths and it can be encoded by Ingress because Ingress knows what is it adding. So
right, but the point is that your offset value is not large enough to have arbitrary down there. So you either need to address that, or probably you need to specifically state the constraint. And I don't know what we do if we have that constraint.
do you mean that the length that is, let me just go to that opcode PSD offset and it's B. So what we say, are you saying that the 16 bits available to encode the length for the offset is not big enough?
Oh, 16 bits. You got 16 bits for the length.
Yes.
Okay, that presumably is enough, providing you note that there may be some padding needed.
It's in units of 4 octets as well, so 16 bits, so 65,000 words.
Okay. So your offset is big enough. You do need to have a little discussion about padding somewhere or other.
Yeah. Yes.
So you need to address. You just need to address the arbitrary nature. Now, whether we would actually build it for that, whether that really is sensible, or whether we need some other structure, because it does seem odd to have to go all that far back in the packet to get to stuff that you need to do immediate forwarding. So I don't think there'd be anyone who could implement actually an arbitrary ACH sort of size and still do MNA. It's just too far into the packet. So I just wonder whether we've quite got this right, whether we need to put some types of non-IP service as a complete block with their control word, and some with their control word at the front. I'm thinking that the way we do beer might be different from the way we would do pseudowire. But anyway, we do need to delve into that detail, because that's the sort of thing that bites you. The other thing is that I'm not sure whether you say this, but it's clear that you have to have something at the bottom of the stack to say what you have to dispose. And I'm not sure, I don't think I saw the mandatory M&A subtract must be at the bottom of the packet in order to get rid of the draft song stuff, for example.
Yeah, so both I2E select or in hop by hop, the node that removes the NAS, if the P bit is set, this means there's a post stack. And if it's removing that NAS, it has to remove the associated post stack data.
Okay, so you're planning to rewrite that's quite a lot of rewrite potentially to do on the packet, but okay. As long as it's clear in the document that whatever you do, you have to construct this packet so that there is never any information that's spurious information in the packet when it's handed off to its next application.
That's right. Yeah, it may not be clear. You're probably right. So, but we will look at it and make sure.
I'll give you a detailed comment on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stewart. Tony, you still have your hands raised, so go ahead. Go ahead, please.
I did want to point out one clarification. In this version of the document, the unknown opcode handling, that actually migrated. It was per opcode in version 3, and now that's become a per NAS option. So that's a significant change that I wanted to call to people's attention.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. Yeah.
I must say, in reading 4, I was much more confident in terms of the text.
Okay, thank you, Rakesh. There's no one else that has their hand raised. But we have more comments, I guess, that were sent to the alias, and Greg can, or maybe scheduled to talk about, and Loa as well. So
Okay, so let me share. I put a couple slides. Let me know. Okay, so, okay, do you see the screen?
yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so now I would not see their hands raised, so I appreciate, Eric, if you or...
Yep. I'll help with that, Greg.
Okay,
Sure.
great, thank you. Okay, so that's a summary of my substantive comments. There are some needs, but needs definitely editorial.
Do you want, Greg, just the protocol? Do you want, you know, authors to pitch in and try to address as you go, or?
Well, Tony and Rakesh are present. Jax is not. So I don't know if we have time to do the discussion. Maybe let me present overall, because I do have a section of my comments where that I see that would be beneficial to address them before the adoption poll or before adoption, because some of these some of these comments, as Law suggested, for example, a new document on user-defined actions. Similarly, jumping a little bit, their use of select scope is not clear in the document, so it can be either separate document or extension of this document. So probably if I can walk of the first two slides that list the comments, and then we can go to the second part that I see as comments that or concerns that need to be addressed before adoption, and then we can have a discussion if time permits. How about
Okay,
that?
sounds a good plan to me, at least. Greg, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so user-defined action, as I mentioned, Law suggested a new document, so that makes a lot of sense to me, because this is a large document already. Okay, so I was not clear about this. Was a confusing passage in the document about copying something that can be overwritten. So there are a couple indications that modifying NAS by the transit node is allowed. I think that needs more explanation why this functionality and what the use case of modifying MNA. Another is that, oh, okay, Stuart, you want to comment now or?
Well, the use case for modifying AD is all around in the deterministic delivery sort of space, where there are various schemes that are being proposed that might want you to modify which exit cycle this packet goes into, or may record some time information that you need. And whether this is in the in-stack data or the post-stack data, I guess is subject to the design, but I see that the latency world may well want to do modified AD.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then I had a question about the text that refers to the last copy of hop by hop NAS. Is it last copy? It was not clear, the last copy in the document. And as I understand, because of scope difference, so the placement of last copy and it could be ingress to egress or select. So how this is disposed is not defined. Actually, I find that the whole disposal of NAS is underdefined in the document.
Do you want to take Tony's comment, by the way, Greg?
Yeah.
Thank you. So just to back up one bullet, yes, you specifically allowed to modify AD. However, because of hashing that might happen, we did add a restriction that we're not supposed to modify the first 20 bits of an LSC.
Yeah. Actually,
do you want to qualify this with unless an entry label is present, which is quite a common method of subverting the ECMP problem?
We did not add that qualification, no.
Do you want to go? I'm just suggesting you might consider it, because that's the other standard method of saying don't screw up the ECMP.
We'd be happy to discuss that.
Sure.
Actually, what I wanted to ask, and that's you can see it further down. My understanding, the current formats that don't have explicit indication of whether LSC includes action indicator or AD. So in that regard, if that's correct, if my understanding is correct, then how would transit node know that it's modifying AD and not an action indicator?
Hopefully the node that is modifying it actually understands M&A and has parsed the header and is in doing so has realized which parts are AD and which parts are opcodes and flags.
Well, but that will require, or that will expect, that each transit node understands all network actions. And I think that there, in the document, there is a provision that the node might not understand all of them.
That's correct. If it does not understand all of them, it still has length fields so that it can skip over things that are not there. And then the undefined U-bit tells you whether you should punt or drop.
And actually that's where okay, we start. It's a good discussion, but I'm a little bit jumping then in my comments, because I don't see how network action indicator and ancillary data are separable in format C or format D.
They are intentionally not separated because we want to overlay them to minimize the number of different formats we have to have.
But then that's a problem, because if ancillary data doesn't have a uniform format, how a node that does not understand network action, will skip over ancillary data of an action that it does not support?
It always has a length field.
No, but it's not a D length field. Ancillary data format.
Every opcode, if you take a look at the formats, everything, all LOCs that introduce possible ancillary data have a count of the number of LOCs of ancillary data that follow. And everything else has an opcode.
But opcode has only 4 LSC. So my understanding is that now we have format A, B, C, and D.
Correct.
And C and D can combine bit mapped action indicator and ancillary data. So
no, you can't have both at the same time.
Greg?
Yeah.
What we did, there is an opcode and 1 LSE's worth of network actions, and then there is ancillary data. We don't allow you to have more than 1 LSE of flags. So what will happen is, if we define additional network action flags with ancillary data, we'll define new opcodes for it.
Well, then it was not clear in the document. But
okay, but yeah, so
in my reading. So
okay, if there is ancillary data, there is one and only one LSE with flags, and then there's the ancillary data.
Okay, but still.
And so you will have the length field, so you know how to skip over the opcode that you don't understand.
Okay, I will need to look at it with this angle, but it was not clear in the document that it could be only one LSC of actions.
Yeah, actually, we put that restriction in response to your previous comments about this issue.
Okay. Yeah, if you can point me to the text, and I'll read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you had raised this issue, and we said, okay,
yeah,
we will just have one LSE's worth of flags. Then we'll have the ancillary data.
Okay.
And then if we need to define additional network action flags, we'll just put them in a different opcode.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I appreciate that you're addressing my earlier comment, but I probably was not in a normative language. That's why I missed it. But yeah, if you can send me on a list this text with this way of handling, I will look it up.
Okay. I'll do
Okay.
that.
So another question I had about this requirement that ingress to egress scope must be encoded after hop by hop, because there's might be, well, at least I can imagine some use case when we want to change the processing order so that ingress to egress is processed by their egress node before hop by hop. So then this requirement, encoding requirement, would be a limitation. I have a question about use case of O-bit being cleared, and because there is no explanation of how it's interpreted and handled, only text explains, the draft explains processing of O-bit being set. So we talked earlier about non-IP payload. And as I understand, that's primarily for post-stack data. So I believe that needs to have, yes, Tony.
So there's nothing in draft JAGs that is meant to be IP specific. So maybe the comment really is more about draft song.
Yes, that's correct. But as Rakesh indicated, so their idea of offset indicator for PSD is to handle, for example, generic associated channel header. So if that's the case, that's in a non-IP payload.
Greg, I see Loa also raising their hand.
Yes, I am. I have a question on the ingress to egress and hop by hop processing. So Greg, are you saying that for any transit node, processing hop by hop first is okay, but when you get to the egress node, you might want to process the ingress to egress before you do the hop by hop?
Well, that's my understanding of what ingress to egress is. So ingress to egress only to be processed by ingress and egress, so not to be processed by hop. Otherwise, it would be a hop by hop scope.
Yeah, but the text today, if I remember correctly, say that we always process hop by hop before ingress to egress, right? Or what is your bullet in the middle of the slide
Yes.
called overall?
Right. But the thing is that, for example, I can imagine the same IOM, and IOM has a different trace option. So it is hop by hop and ingress to egress. So it might be that we wanted egress node to process what is ingress to egress IOM before it processes hop by hop IOM.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think we have Tony in the queue. Let him try to answer.
So one way of dealing with a different ordering is to make use of select. Frankly, I2E is redundant with select because you can always put select at the end of the stack.
Yeah, well, yeah, again, as I mentioned, probably select is something that needs more explanation, and it could be either in this document or in a new document, because how it's being selected and whether select is only to a single node on a LSP, or it could be several nodes that will act on the select. And then if it's several nodes, then how it's different from hop by hop.
Yes, it's to a single node. That's the point.
Yeah, but then how this node is identified, is it through control management plane?
It's the node that pops the label immediately ahead of the select NAS.
Okay, so basically it must be popped. Yeah, again, I didn't find there in the document being specified, so I think that will be good to have it in the document stated.
More question from John, Greg.
Okay.
John Drake. I can't hear him.
John, you're on mute.
Hi,
Okay.
John. Okay, maybe he's unmuted now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, Loa has already commented that having two documents may have issues. So I definitely don't think that we want to pull select out into a separate document.
Okay. No, again, that's what Tony explained. I think that makes sense, but it's just will be good to have it in the document.
I think it is in the document. It may not be sufficiently clear to the general reader.
Okay. Then I'll have to admit that I'm general reader and it was not clear to me.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, there may be
Because
an issue with the document.
I did just a grab on select, and I think that mentioned only once in the document.
Yeah, I mean, and we would be happy to have an extended discussion with you about what is lacking.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So going forward, yeah, that's the first comment, the first bullet in this slide is something that we already discussed, and I'll look in the text that addresses this use case. So there is a, yes, John.
I was going to talk about the last bullet on your chart, but so I'm going to wait.
Okay. Yeah. So there is the mention on entire NAS, and again, my understanding is that because of scope can be different, so that NAS is LSCs that follow the special purpose label. So my understanding that for the single node might have to process or will be expected to process several NASs.
Correct.
Okay, then might be there needs to be more wording on, or at least change the wording. What is entire NAS, because it might be a more than one substack.
I don't know. That's not correct.
Not? For
I don't
example.
understand the confusion.
No, the confusion is, okay, so the text talks about disposing of a NAS, entire NAS. Okay, so
It's talking about disposing of one at a time.
one at a time. Okay, maybe I just found that entire NAS is probably better just to talk about one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, as mentioned, so I didn't find their select scope being sufficiently discussed in the document. So probably would be good to have more text about it. And the last bullet is disposing of post-tag data. So because post-tag data is my understanding, it seems that it might be referenced from multiple NASes in the stack. Then the question is, so how, whose responsibility of disposing of PSD is?
And we can add text clarifying that.
Huh?
We will add text clarifying that.
Okay, yeah, because there, I start, some drawing on several use cases, and yeah, there are a number of cases grew up significantly, and might be something better to be restricted and use of PSD, because I started imagining, for example, that there are multiple PSD and there are different locations in the stack, in a post stack. So how to dispose of that, and yeah. So we'll be glad to discuss with you. Okay, John, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Joel had alerted us to your last points, and I think it's going to be a little bit tricky because of the fact that the post-stack data can contain both multiple scopes.
Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, I think that, Joel alerted us to the issue. I think we have to study the how you draft to make sure it handles multiple scopes, and we figure out how we get rid of what post-stack data. So anyway, it's a work in progress. The other thing I was going to say is, with respect to select, if you use RSVP-TE, you can also specify the select nodes at the time you set up the LSP.
Well, yeah, I think it's fits in an explanation that Tony gave, that it's a node that pops up, or where the NAS is is at the top of the stack.
If we're using RSVP-TE, it's not clear that we can have multiple NASs within the stack. So it's another area that we need to study a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had a question. Probably I didn't bring it here forward, but there was some text that referenced RSVP-TE, but didn't reference LDP. So I was wondering why LDP is not being considered. So why it seems that authors thought that M&A cannot be used in LDP domain. But it's not that significant. Okay, so
I don't think it was meant to be exclusionary.
Okay, that's what I see as something that needs resolution, and user-defined M&A, if it's a separate document and the group agrees on it, I'm perfectly fine with that, of course. So use case ID modification, yes. I need to look at, in my opinion, okay, in my understanding, it's related to encoding of bitmap action indicator NAD. So if and when John sends me this text that addresses this, I think that might go away. OBIT is still not clear to me. To me, it looks like OBIT is not necessary. Case of non-IP payload, I believe that it needs to be given more discussion in a document. So skipping, yes, skipping is, we already talked about it. Select scope, probably in this document, not a separate document. Yes, and disposing PSD, I see it as a very important issue that somehow needs to be worked between this draft and the song draft. That's all.
What you want to?
Okay,
Yes.
Tony.
I have a couple of quick questions on the last slide to Greg.
Okay.
You say needs resolution. Do you mean needs resolution before we start the working group adoption poll? Or is it before working group last call?
Well, okay, if based on our discussion, I think that the really issue that I would like to see it addressed before the adoption poll is this disposition of PSD.
Okay.
Because it seems like everything else I might be missed in the text, or it could be very simple. For example, select scope. User defined, it already there is a proposal to have a new document, and if there is interest of doing that, so if there are people who volunteer to work on a user defined M&A, then it's fine. If there is none, if there is no interest, then maybe we don't need it. That's my opinion. But disposing PSD, it's important issue, and as John indicated, Joe brought it up earlier. So I do believe that it needs to be at least given more details in the document before adoption, because it's a technical issue. It's I started really trying to figure out in my head and on a paper, and I didn't see a simple solution.
So the normal procedure we do is that, okay, we find an issue during the working group adoption poll or review before. We make a note about the issues and says, we need to solve this before we go to working group last call. But it's not really intended to stop the working group adoption. So I think we are raising the bar for working group adoption kind of month by month, and it's getting harder and harder. Right?
Okay.
So what I'm saying is you need to make a very good case if you need to actually resolve it before working group adoption poll. And I haven't seen that yet.
Okay. Yes. And I usually look at three aspects in adoption poll, and I think that you summarized it earlier. That the document addresses a real issue, the document is reasonably well written, and the solution is viable. So certainly first two items, I put a check mark on it. So it's real problem, is being recognized by the group. It's much better in readability, but I feel that the question of disposition of PSD is significant enough so that it makes me the question of all the solution. And again, I don't know whether it needs to be addressed in this document or in the song document, because it is related to what is defined in the song. Because, for example, in my opinion, if we take the PSD out, then there is no issue. But supporting post-tag data, and not only data, but song document allows to signal actions post-tag. So that makes things much more complex. And I don't know where this has to be addressed, whether it has to be addressed in this document, in the song document, or some other document.
I kind of following you kind of halfway down that path. But if we, after the working group adoption poll says the document is adopted, there are issues, there are the following issues, and then we list them and say that those need to be addressed before working group last call. Why is that not sufficient?
Again, if the working group feels that, that's fine. Again, it's I do have a concern about this issue of disposing PSD.
Okay, so you should have
So,
two headings. You should have two headings on your last slide. The one that is sorted as need to be resolved before working group last call, and one that needs to be resolved before working group adoption. Right?
yeah.
And it's a disposing PSD that is in the second one.
Yes, that I feel because I see it as a technical issue. Everything else is editorial, or at least it seems like editorial.
Okay. I think we have
Tony.
Tony in line.
Thank you. This is actually not related to Greg stuff. Joel and I had a unicast offline discussion. He had some questions and clarifications about the document. He and I worked together, and we have some text changes that we would like to propose, and I will forward that to the authors separately. But I wanted folks to know there are other changes coming.
So Tony, does that concern the discussion you will had on the OBIT?
No, the OBIT I did not have a good answer for. It does overlap with disposing of PSD. That is one of the several changes that Joel wanted to change.
Okay.
Okay, Stewart is next.
I wanted to pick up on the discussion that was going on a bit about whether the ability to do disposition was a showstopper for adoption. Okay. Now, I don't think it is, right? It is a showstopper for the document proceeding to an RFC, but I am worried that we are massively raising the bar in terms of what working group adoption means, with everyone these days, and this is generic across the IETF, seeming to want their problem solved before it can be adopted, instead of realizing that adoption is simply the process of handing over the document from the authors to the working group, and that not all documents that enter the working group will emerge as RFCs. So with that sort of in mind, I don't see solving the disposition problem as being a requirement for adoption. It is a requirement for finishing the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stewart. Rakesh is next.
Just one technical comment on disposing the PSD. The way I understood is that the decap node will typically see the egress node, the hop by hop or select or the I2E scope NAS, and it will be removing the NAS. It will see the P flag and it will remove the corresponding the PSD data as well. So typically it will remove, if it sees multiple NAS, it will remove all the NAS as well as the associated all the post-tech data as well. So I don't see an issue on egress side. Only issue I see is that if a label stack contains multiple NAS and some intermediate node removes an NAS and keeps some because it's somewhere else in the label stack. Now maybe there is an ambiguity of what is the post-tech data associated with the one being removed and one being left on the label stack. So it's one case that's probably not clear and needs some more discussion and text. But I could be wrong if Greg, there is something else I'm missing.
It's pretty much that you described the case that I had a concern about. So yes, when there are multiple NASs and there might be multiple PSDs sections referenced from these NASs. So and the same on the same hand, the use case could be that multiple NASs they point to the single PSD segment. So yes, that at least in my mental exercise that presented a problem. So because, for example, if there is a case that multiple NASs reference the single PSD, then disposal, how it's done? Is there a counter of references or what is used? But probably, as Tony mentioned, so that there was already discussion of it offline. So maybe there is something more details to be added that will clarify. And again, to what Stuart mentioned is that might be my really view of this issue is as very significant that might affect the overall solution is too high. So that basically that I'm putting it too much weight on this, and even if we will have to change some encodings in proposed formats, that can be done after working group adopted. So if that's what group feels like, I don't have a problem with it. Okay, I don't see any hands, but might be there's somebody who wants to.
No, Greg, you're right. We have someone. Rakesh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one question for chairs. We are talking about the working group adoption for draft jacks and draft song as well, right? Both together. What was the thinking, I guess, on that front?
I try to answer. My thought is that we actually do draft jags first because it's more overall, and then go ahead with the draft song if we have it ready when we actually close the adoption poll for draft jags. So not together because that's always complicated, but in sequence and very tightly coupled.
Thanks, though.
Okay, is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's fine. I just wanted to know what is
Okay.
steps. Thanks.
I should also say that we will the chairs will discuss this on Tuesday, but so far this is only my opinion.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, let me thank Greg for his comments and going through them. And the last item we had on the agenda was for LOA to update on the adoption of the LSP ping no route alert. So do you want to give a heads up on that?
Yes, yeah, very quickly. We have a working group adoption poll out. I have, I think, 2 good comments with kind of a detailed review. However, I'm a little bit concerned because in that draft, the authors say that they don't know about any implementations of this router alert for LSP ping, and we want to make it historic. But I would like to see comments on that, at least on a few hands. And if you can, please look at the draft. Send a mail to the list if you're okay with going ahead with adopting the document. We have How You in line.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I just have a comment about the adoption. I don't see why we should give the adoption call for them separately, because they actually form the same one solution. Why is depending on the other one? So I think they should be both. Yeah, if we have an adoption call for them, it should be adopted at the same time. So no, just do one and another. I don't see a reason for that.
Loa, you're right.
Yeah, I think I understand your concern, though that means actually if the situation I see as now is that I see more people wanting to progress the draft JAGs, and it means that if we say that we need to do them both at the same time, we need to hold one document to get the other ready. And I think that if I have a document ready for work group adoption poll, I shouldn't really stop it. So I would. What I said before is that I can imagine that we do it kind of when we close the first one, we start the other one, and they will be close.
Okay, I just want to point out actually, the post-stack encoding extension header documents. I think it's ready. It's already quite a few years, and also yeah, we discussed it a lot of times, and I think it's actually mature enough to be ready for adoption. Yeah.
Thank you. Or you, Stewart, you're next.
So, without sort of commenting on the specifics of draft, how you draft, I see no reason that we need to hold back draft JAGs before the post-stack data design is ready, because I don't think anyone has any doubts that we could design a post-stack data system, whether it's the how you design or something else. There are a million ways of designing something that can do that. So we don't need to we don't need to have any doubts that we could design a post-stack data system. Therefore, I don't see any reason for holding one hostage to the other at this stage.
Okay, thanks. And Tony, go ahead.
So the purpose of working group adoption is to select the basis of the document that we start with moving forward, and trying to focus all of our efforts on the one document. it is not meant to be the fact that we think the document is perfect. It's very much turning it over to the working group for further development. That said, both draft JAGS and draft Song have withstood quite a test of time. We have rough consensus that this is the direction we're headed. It seems like unnecessary overhead to have two separate adoption polls. They are paired. Let's just move forward.
Okay, thank you. Jimmy, do you want to comment? Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I agree with what Tony and Stuart just mentioned. I think these two documents are paired, and we have been discussed for a while that both are components of the one single solution. So I think they can be moved forward together. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Rakesh?
I also vote for both documents moving forward for working group adoption together, as mentioned. Thanks.
Okay, thanks to all. I think we can have, as Laura mentioned, this is an item we will be discussing in the next meeting for the chairs, and yeah, your feedback is valuable. I think it will come on the table. All right. I see Jimmy still raising his hand, but maybe by mistake, is it? Okay, it is. And Loa's replaced him, so go ahead, Loa.
Yeah, I just want to comment. The experience of running working group adoption polls on two different drafts in the same poll is not good. It's very confusing, but well, it could be confusing. We could do so, not doing it together, but doing them closely connected is probably what we want to do.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid, commenting until next meeting. I think you're thinking, Loa, about, comments coming in for one draft, and if we're mixing the poll of two drafts in one email, it becomes hard to track.
Why not just set up, take the request for an
Yeah.
adoption poll for draft Song and just process it as a normal adoption poll, and they'll happen in about the same time frame, and comments will be targeted to the correct document at all stages. But I don't think we need to get complicated here. They don't need to be a parallel adoption. They just need, I think both teams have said they're ready to ask for adoption. So let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I think we're right on time, and thanks for the very good meeting today. I will stop the recording now, right now, and then